Okay, hi everyone. After some technical difficulties, let's begin. So this will be the second stream I'm doing. As with the last stream I did, we will work on a C++ Immediate Mode GUI application called Prompt Workbench. Let me just show you where we were. For those of you that want to catch up, the last stream, the last video is on my channel and you can quickly skim over it. But I'm working on this IMGUI desktop application, C++ desktop app called Prompt Workbench. Let me just run the app real quick so that we can see where I was at last time. And today, and I'll tell you what we're gonna do today. So Prompt Workbench is this work in progress app I have right here. And it has, as I mentioned many times, test suites of system and user prompts, and you run them to get answers and compare them. That's the very short version of what they are. And last time I was making this form to create a test suite, which is one database item. And we got to a place where I have the form. Let me just add test suite 5, description, and some prompt. And let's do test model. And you can create an actual item, and it brings you back to the actual list view where you can see it. Works instantaneously, but there's a little bit of work to be done here still. As you can see, no custom styling is applied. This is the very default IMGUI prompt styles, and they're a little bit broken because my multi-line inputs currently are 200 pixels in width. I don't want that styles at all, but more importantly than the style part, I would also want to implement validation. Currently we have none. I can create a test suite with empty fields, and that's okay for it, which is not fine. So we'll work on validation, styling, and if the time allows, which I doubt, we will create another form to create user prompts. And yeah, I don't think the time will allow for anything more today, but if we can do the validation and styling, I would be satisfied. So let's see where we can go. Starting with the validation. Now, form validation will be kind of straightforward. Let's go to the actual development environment. So I'm starting Tmux. I open my new Vim. Let me update my plugins real quick. That should take a second. Yep. And I say form validation should be straightforward because actually we're doing immediate mode. And as we're doing immediate mode, we have right here all of the fields, and they are directly bound to a string, a simple string in what I call a view model. Right here, create test suite view model, which is just one struct of fields and nothing more. And as this directly modifies those values, I would say validation would be very simple. The only thing we need to essentially do is when we actually create, which is right here, when the create button is pressed. Let me actually zoom this a bit so that it's more visible on stream. I think that's fine, yeah. So when we actually create right here in this function, when the button is pressed, it's not an actual function, but an if statement, because this is immediate mode, we can validate before running all of these. And that is actually enough. With that, we can also output the actual user errors here below each item. So if an error is related to title, we'll output some label below it, etc. Quite straightforward. Let me just zoom. I think that's better. Okay. So I have this IMGUI header left over that's unused. I can remove that. And let's start. Now, how are we going to start? I need a validation function, which naturally should be in the create test suite view model. I'll go to it, jump to its definition, and it's right here. As I mentioned, we're talking about a simple struct And as I don't do the traditional object-oriented approach where I associate my models tightly, my methods tightly in the class, I would need to just pass that struct. It's a single instance struct to the actual, sorry, I need to check something, to the actual function that will validate. We should ideally have a single validate function and a struct to hold errors for each item, which will be a boolean flag if a field has an error plus an error value. We could play it with a string only and a single value, and if the string is empty, presume that the field hasn't errored, but I prefer a flag and a string value to not rely on the actual string that much. The error string. The error string is just informative for the user, and I don't like to rely on it too much. Okay, so essentially here, is that a header file? Yeah, that's view models header. I will do the function definition here. So we'll have validation, validate, which will be a void function, and it will accept, actually should it be a void function? We could not store error state in the view model. No, we should store error state in the view model because we need to render it to the user, so we can't just return it as a just temporary object. And this will of course accept the view model, and that's what it needs. Okay, and it should be able to do everything with that instance. Essentially, this will be just a simple check if a field is empty, a regular expression maybe for more complicated checks. I will make a note about regular expressions, by the way. So let me open another pane to the right. I'll open the CPP file here. And let me open my new Vim, and view models CPP is where currently my view models are all in one header and one CPP file. I will probably split them to multiple CPP files, but that will happen in the future. Currently there are 100 lines, so it's very small file according to my standards, and that's pretty fine. Now let me, I'll switch these around so that my header file is to the right and my CPP implementation file to the left, and I will copy that definition. Sorry, not refresh. I'll copy the validate definition. And I'll paste it in my CPP file. Okay. All right. So here we have a void function. We need to, of course, add the namespace, which is create test suite in view models, right? And this item is also in the same namespace, but as we have it here in the functional definition, we don't need to redefine it. And I can do that. Actually, I don't do that usually, this kind of formatting. And we have the create test suite view model. So let's first do simple checks. And the simple checks will be if a string is empty, essentially. And what else? Let's check if it's empty. Actually, we need to consider the fields. We have 4 fields: title, description, system prompt, and model. And they are all textual fields which would not be very strongly validated. There's not something like a phone number or an email here. It's just textual fields, and most of them are for the user's reference. We will require them all, and we might limit them in terms of length, but that's pretty much it. By the way, I'm monitoring the comments, but keep in mind that they're a minute or two behind, so I'll answer as soon as I see any. All right. Well, here's the thing. As we need to only check here if the field is empty and its length, we could opt to not do regular expressions, because something about regular expressions in C++ is that they are very slow. I mean, not that they are very slow compared to other languages, of course, or other implementations, but this is a very generic implementation of regular expressions, and it's not meant to be used in performance scenarios. And this isn't a performance scenario. You click a button and you only do one evaluation, which should be fine in any case. So one option is to do that. Just build a regex and do regex match. Another option is to just check for an empty string and length. But if we need more complicated validation on other forms, we will go into a scenario where we have both regular expression validation and just ordinary checking with C++ type of validation, and that wouldn't be very consistent. And given that any performance difference does not matter in this case, practically, because we're checking like 3 or 4 values once per click on a specific action that's taken, I think I might go with the regex route as a consistent option to validate everything. I don't know, tell me what you guys think. All right, so I'll prompt Quote to help me with the regexes. All right, give me a C++ regex for non-empty string with character limits, say up to 255, for example. Okay. That's a very simple regex. Or we could do that. I'm actually going back and forth here. On one hand, having consistency with regexes all the way is something. On the other hand, having this regular expression, although simple, compared to just string is empty, string length, is quite... I would say this is much better. And it will be more performant. That's the other thing. I might go with this. All right. So to achieve that, I will actually define some Boolean local functions here in the CPP file, and they will be... I would usually do isTitle valid, isDescription valid, isSystemPrompt valid, but in this case, they're so similar that we could make a single function with a parameter for length, which I think I'll do. Is valid string, but how do we call it? Or the other option is to compose something functional and have an isRequired function and has length, but that would be less performant and I don't like that. Let's go the naive route, isTitle valid, and then we'll optimize later when we see how it goes. Actually, this is the function, so I can just... this would be my implementation for the... Let me fix some spacing. For the title, very straightforward. Less than or equal to 255. is string valid with length, and we could pass an int of length. Let me collapse this. And this can be used with pretty much every field on that form. So now I can say this check for what? For title, which in this case is create test suite view model title. And we can check if that is 255 in length. So in this case, we have an invalid title. All right, and we essentially need to do that for all of these. And when we do that, when those are invalid, we need to set some error structs, error flags in the view model. But we'll talk about that in a bit. Let me first input these items. So description, well, for description, I would just do is required. Let's try this naming. Oops. And that would return not as empty. Because I don't want to limit it in terms of length. I don't think so, at least. Actually, why wouldn't I? Description is used for the UI to have a user-friendly description for the app user when he makes his prompts. And I would like to limit that, ideally to something like 1,000 characters at most. And here, let me adjust that comment, invalid description. And let's do more. Here we'll do is required for system prompt, because we don't want to limit that. And I can collapse this to a single line. All right. And finally, model. Well, we will limit model in terms of length. Model names are very small, so 255 characters should be sufficient. Okay, so you have the core logic. Now, in all of these, this shouldn't be void, first of all. So this function in itself should return a Boolean value, that's for sure. Because when we call it, we want to know immediately if there's an error. And in all of these cases, we'll return false. And only if everything is valid, we'll return true. Now, with that in mind, for now, I will just output something to the console when the errors occur, so that we see that our validation is working as expected. Okay. This would be invalid description. This would be invalid system prompt, and here we have model. Okay, so now we can test, but first we need to actually utilize that function. In the view, when we press the button, the first thing we'll do is check. So here we have an if. So in that if, we'll check if the create tests from the view model, we need to call that function, and we'll pass create test to the view model to it. And if it's not true, we can't do not true right now. We need to wrap the entire thing in that if statement, but we'll change that later. Now we're testing, so we can do that. Let me just see, where's my opening bracket? I don't have it. All right, so now we can finally test. So Atomic Plays asks, what am I developing? I am making a prompt testing workbench, system prompt testing workbench, something that does tests with multiple user prompts for a single system prompt so that you can build LLM agents, something like an IDE for LLM agents as a desktop app with C++ and Time GUI. Okay, let me run, and I am doing a form validation for one of the data types today. Form validation of a simple form that creates test suits right now. You'll see in a second. All right, let's build. So what we expect now in this form is if the fields are invalid, it won't create them and go back. It won't create the item, but it will output to the console each field that is invalid. And that is what's happening. Now, one thing that's kind of messed up is it's breaking on the first item because we return early. We ideally don't want that because in the end game, what we'll implement is that the user will get an error message beneath the field, and we don't want him to get an error messages fed by a spoon to him like one by one. It's annoying. You want all error messages at once. So we won't return false at these spots at the end. But let's test. So invalid description, invalid system prompt, model, and finally we create. Okay, so this is working as expected so far. And I'm wondering, let me go to the validate function. All right, here it is. So these early returns should disappear. And we can check at the end of this function if the thing is valid, or we could not check at all and just do that check in the actual function. Like we need to save the error state somewhere. If we save the error state, this function returning is sort of fake. I mean, it doesn't matter that much. It's just for ergonomics at that point, because the user can check the error state in the view model. Let me open the view model to the right, the header, I mean, so that we can see how are we going to save the errors. We have a couple of options. They will be in this struct, because this is the model for the entire view. And the options we have is to store flags first. Flags, Boolean flags. Like this. And then an error message. which is one approach. Another approach is to group these two into a struct, because we'll have them for each field. And we could make a struct like field error. That can hold these values. It will have a value as error. Sorry. I got to Rustland for a second. It will have a flag and a message. It can be just message. Let me check the comments. All right. And I would prefer this ideally, honestly, because it will make the organization review model a little bit better. And for now, I'll keep these right here in the create test suite namespace, but I could reuse this globally without any issue. Input field error, I could, and this could be much more global. Hi, Saren. This is much more a very global type of struct, just a flag and a message. Now, I'll call it form error, because we can later extend this form error to include something additional that's specific to forms. And that's why I want to have a specific struct for that that's tied to this logic. I don't know. At least that's what I'm thinking right now. I might change that later. All right, so we'll have a form error for title. And we'll have form errors for all of my fields. There's just 4 of them, so. I have description. Okay, and I can move them like this. I think that's nice. Well, now we can store the error and the message in these structs, and they're accessible right here. So I'll remove the earlier return and the debugging message, and what we need to do is title error set that true and set the message to something. And now we get to a point that my initial instinct to make some small atomic functions and separate empty width length was actually completely right. And I don't know why I made that silly mistake. I'll have is empty. And I'll have is has min length, string and length. Because this way I can check if it's empty and return an error message of some sorts, or like return different error messages depending on the what the error is, essentially. And now I can do that if I need to check what if is empty. All right. Was that how the function is called? Except my logic is currently wrong. So this is empty, and this is okay. This is negative. So true here. I need to have either negative or positive validation checks on each function. And I'm just wondering what wording to use for these. If this is empty, this has to be essentially a negative of has-been length, which is not normal. I would rather use not empty and keep that like this. By normal, I mean usually in validation, you don't see negatives like this. I think this should be fine. And if it's not empty, okay, then we can do that. Set the error message and all that jazz. Okay. Wait, what error do I have? I'm missing a closing bracket, sorry. I'm a little bit tired. Got a full work day in before the stream today, so excuse me if I'm a little bit slower than usual. What do we have? Error and the message will be a string. And we'll just do what? Title is required. Should be fine. Now, if this not has min length of 255, wait, max length. Okay. The error message will be what? Title has to be less than 255 characters. Okay. And we have to repeat that for all of them. Now let's remove the rest and see what we're gonna do. I'll copy and duplicate it for the other items. So is not empty description. Actually, description error here. Okay. Let me see. Like this. Then we check the description length. If it's 1000, that should be fine, I think. Okay, did that mistake again. Here, we'll add a message description has to be less than 1000 characters. And actually, let's stop here and test at this point. Now we removed the early returns here, so at the end we need to check all of them. If title create test suite view model title error has error, or the other ones. So let's do actually no, let me just collapse this to this line and then I'll check like this, or create test suite VM description, right? Description error has error, and in these cases we'll return false. And I can make this look a little bit better. Please make it a little bit more readable. Although I don't like that at all. So I think I'll stick with that. I'll just list them here. All right, now besides, let me go to the view, create test suits view. So besides this check for validation, we can also output the errors if they exist. By the way, if this passes, we need to set the value. We need to set these values to false and empty error message. So after we check the title and it has no issues, we need to set it back. Otherwise, resubmission would not work if you make one error, of course. Okay, and I need to do the same thing for description, and then we can test. But actually, I need to do this after I do this check, of course. Invoke. So I'll cut that and I'll add this right here. So at the end, we reset all of them if everything is valid. And as I said, let's here in the view right here, after title, we can, for now, I'll use I'm GUI text. I think it was like this. And I need to import I'm GUI, include I'm GUI.h. And let's do create test suite VM title error message. And I think this is string. Yeah, we need the C string for I'm GUI, right? Format string is not a string error, potentially insecure. Treat the string as an argument. Oh yeah, of course, of course. That's better. So this will output the error message if it exists. And I will add an if statement here to check if there is an error. This is a Boolean flag, so we can just do that like this. I think that's quite minimal. And the same thing for description. Okay. That's description error. I make this mistake all the time. Okay. Let's see now. I'll quit this and rerun the app. First of all, let's see if we built, because I did a few changes, and we'll check. We should get error messages now, and basically the validation workflow should work end-to-end for 2 fields. If that's done, we'll be in a pretty good shape. So, required, great. I won't test the length because I don't want to bother. Later on, I'll do some testing, regression testing kind of stuff. Let's check the comments. All right. This is quite explicit, admittedly. It's very, very bare bones and built from scratch, but I mean, it's great. You have full control over it. And of course, we will apply styles next. After I apply the validation to system prompt and model, we will apply styles and make this a little bit better looking, maybe a little bit reddish in color and stuff, you know. Okay, let's open new Vim again on the right. And actually, I'll quit it so that it's not distracting. I'll even close this pane now, and we can focus working on the other 2 fields. So let's first check the required on the system prompt field. And the message will be system prompt is required. Quite straightforward. We won't check system prompt length. As I mentioned, that should be unlimited. Here we can add .or. I can actually add the or check for the model field as well right now. And here we need to do this reset. Oh, we don't do it for description error. We need to do it for every field, which will be description. What else? System prompt. Yeah. And lastly was model. Okay, not so long. And we have the system prompt validation. Let's do the model validation last. Okay, so if model is empty, I will... Wait, I need to remove that. I'll set the model error flag. And output model is required. And we also need to check its length. It shouldn't be longer than 255 in any case, so we need to check here what how was the method called? Has max length. Model 255. And what were the error messages? Description has to be less than 100,000 characters. So model has to be less than 255 characters. And save. And that should do it. So let's run again and check. Now we should have all of our error messages. Oh, we don't because I don't output them yet. Let's go to the views, create test suits. And we need to do that if statement and text field for all of them. I mean, I'll probably make a component that does this, just takes an error and outputs a message. It makes perfect sense to do that. So if system prompt error, okay. And finally, we'll do the same for model. All right. And I can rerun. Now we should get the messages. Saren asks where I'm from. I'm from Bulgaria, Eastern European country. All right. Model is required. Yeah, all of these seem to be working as expected. So let's test adding some items. When I resubmit though, this doesn't get reset, which is bad. This doesn't get reset because our logic is a little bit faulty, I think. Yeah, let's grep validate. Okay, here's our validate function. So in this case, this error happens, okay? And the problem is we stop here. And that's not good enough. We need to basically do checks for each one of them, because right now here we have 3 out of 4 errors now, and we fixed title, but this doesn't get reset at any point. So we probably need to do individual checks for each one or do something different, but individual checks are simple enough, and I think that should be just fine. So you can do that. Then check the other one, then the other one, and so on. Very simple and procedural, but understandable. It depends a little bit too much on execution order, but it's normal when it's procedural for now, at least for now. Okay, so title error. So we first do title, then we need to do description, system prompt, and finally model. Hopefully without typos. Okay, let's run again. This time we should be able to reset the field. By the way, let me keep an eye on the time. I don't want to go for too long. Okay, so let's first do it without any input. Yeah, everything is required, that's proper. Now if I do some title, it still doesn't disappear. That's interesting indeed. Okay, let me check. We do. Now, this logic is actually faulty too. Yeah, I cannot rely on this return. This is faulty in its own way. I mean, this is entirely unnecessary logic, which I could omit entirely. If you think about it, as I mentioned, the return value of this function is a nice to have, not really necessary. And this nice to have seems to require a lot of boilerplate logic, and I don't like that. So just do that, and that's it. Actually, just a second. So I need to keep these ifs here. Let me see. At this stage, I have to just do that and check if it doesn't have error. So this will reset everything. And that should be fine. And the actual error state will be kept by the structs, which is expected and normal. I will not rely on this function and any return values from it, so I can make it void. Okay. Let me change the header now. Okay, and I will go to views, create test suite. And here we need to do a little bit more. So we cannot just check like this. First of all, we need to call this function. Just avoid function like this. And we validate. And now we need to check if the fields are valid. Which can happen right here. Let me update my shift width. Whoops. I can do that from the view model. So if it doesn't have an error, and I need to do that with an end clause for all of these. I need to do description here. System prompt. And model, of course. And if all of these, if this is true, it means that we have no errors and we can proceed. And now let's run again. Oh my god, I rewrote this so many times. And we should be working fine. All right. Everything is required. Test title is required should disappear, but it does not. Again. Why is that? Interesting. Very interesting. Oh, yeah. I mean, I did improve it a bit, but I still have the issue here of checking in bulk. Yeah, I do check in bulk. But wait, that doesn't matter really. Because, this is the button. So when we click it, we always run validate. So that shouldn't matter at all. Let's go to validate and see why there's a problem. Functions that only differ in there. Oh, that's an LSP error, I think. That's outdated, yeah. Okay, so of course, when we have a previous error, we should optimistically, the beginning of the function, of course, such a newbie mistake, actually. We don't need to do that. We already have the opposite logic. Why was I so wrong? I am really tired, to be honest, to make this mistake. I mean, we can just reset this at the beginning. Okay, so reset all of them and then check for errors, which is normal. I've done this like 1,000 times, come on. There we go. Okay. Let me run again. I hope it works this time. All right. So we got errors, test title, and test title disappears. Okay, let's do a test submission. Okay. Test 6. By the way, the scroll works, which makes me happy. Yeah, it works absolutely as expected. And I'm very happy with that, to be honest. What I'm not happy with is a little bit of the code it's extremely explicit and wonk right now. Not wonk, not that that's a problem, but let me see if I can optimize it a bit, because I don't think we'll have time for styles. We might have a little bit of time for styles, to be honest. Okay, let's see. We have the validate function. It sets everything to false. I could make this a function, but I actually like it this way. Very explicit. Just access properties directly. Don't do something too fancy. And here it is, ifs. Yeah, there's not much I can do about that. We procedurally check everything one by one. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Leave it as it is. These could be moved to helpers or validation functions layer. In fact, that would probably be better. But I would do that only when I create a second view model, when I do a second validation in the view models. Not now. And I mean, I do that, to be fair. I do this strict thing where I don't abstract away methods that are used only once, because in some cases that might not be the best idea. And when I get to a point where I need to use these same functions again, I might get a better idea, depending on the context, then how to make an abstraction. In this case, it's fairly straightforward, and I'm sure I will be making some kind of validation utilities file or whatever namespace with a couple of functions like this that will be reused throughout view models. But I follow this rule because in other cases, something seems straightforward and you're like, okay, I'm going to use this function everywhere. I will abstract it away prematurely. And then it turns out you won't, or you don't want to use that specific function. But when you see it already abstracted away, then when you get to that point where you're like, okay, so I have this abstraction that I use everywhere, I should use that. Yeah, I find it's a very bad practice, to be honest. All right, let's see what do we got. We might actually have time to work on the styling because I am happy with this. Let me see the view layer again. Create test suits. Oh yeah, here we could improve significantly. This entire thing can be a component. So let's do that. I will open another window and I will open, let me just go. My components are right here in source UI. And I have a single header file and multiple CPP files. This UI header file has a namespace views, and views are just my views, the entire pages, and components, which holds buttons and inputs and stuff like that. And here, I will create an input error message component, which I'll call exactly that. It will be a void function. A void function, which is input error. It could be input error, just that. And it won't accept a string, but an error object. Which now it would be a good time, as I mentioned, to abstract this input error, form error, or whatever, to another file. Let me see where it lives right now. I think in viewModels.h. There it is. Okay, where should it be? That is a good question, because it's sort of a weird thing. It's very UI related. I mean, the way I've made it, it's very UI related. So one option would be to have it in the UI layer. Here we have views, components, and it's not bad to have a couple of structs right here. I think that makes sense, at least for now. By the way, why is there an error here? Ah, okay. Yeah, because of that. So we need to do the following. Okay. And now we include UI form error. Yeah, okay. What's wrong here? In included file, use of undeclared identifier VM. What do you mean? Ah, it's recursively wrong or what? Let me quit new vim. I think I got in some LSP whoop. So what do I need? View models, CPP. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Why's that a problem? Let me see. Wait. I have some kind of mistake. Okay. We have pragma ones here, so that's not an issue. Very interesting. The UI namespace is right here. And very interesting, actually. Am I missing something? Seriously? Here in input error, yeah, whatever. I'm interested with the build pass. No. Don't see what I did wrong. Maybe I'm missing something obvious. I'm obviously missing something very obvious. But what is it? Okay, let me do the following. I would do something alternative. Yeah, I need view models here, of course. Okay. Yeah, I'll move this form error for now to helpers. I have this helpers file. What do I need? String? Yeah. Former, and yeah, let's include that. Its place is honestly not there. I'm just missing something obvious right now, and I wanna just move forward with it temporarily. And we'll debug that later when time comes. Or not debug, just do it straight on. Because I can't figure it out right now. What do we have here? Alt LSPR, probably. Or do I have UI? I don't anymore. So that's definitely an alt error. Okay. I don't need IO stream. And let's go to my input error component because I got too distracted here. I was in the header file. Okay. And let's include helpers here. Okay. And this should get helpers former. And that's it. It will just render an error message. Let me create a CPP file for that. Input error.cpp. I'll just copy something simple, like a button. All right. And we have UI components, what? Input error, which accepts, I'll leave the const, helpers form error reference, which will be error. Yeah, we'll just read it. Okay, it's not Boolean. It's void. All right. I of course co-ops it. I like it to be readable like this. Now, these style variables we'll remove for now. And yeah, this will not return anything as well. I just need to copy the logic, but it was quite simple. I can actually just write it, it will be faster. So the logic is very simple. If error has error, then we render. It was in the namespace and it was text, I think. No, it's something else. Label, maybe. It was like this. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. And a format string, which will be error message cstring. And now I can first of all go to CMake lists and include my CPP file. And second of all, use my component. I'll move the files like this, the view, so that the left side is my view, and I'll open it. And here we can swap this with the component, which will make the view much better. And here we just pass create test shoot VM title error. Much better. We have input, error. All right, and let's do the other ones. This is what? System prompt. And finally, we will do model. Yeah, let's run now. First of all, to compile and see if everything compiles, and then to see if our messages still appear. We do have an error. Undefined reference. Okay, something is not linked. Let me check. CMake lists. Maybe that one wasn't saved. Probably. Let me check my comments while it's building. All right. What's wrong? Too few arguments to IMGUI text. Oh, is that so? Let me see. To save time, I'll go to create a suit. Here I had... No, let's go to the input to components and see what we have here. Ah, this is not saved for some reason. So I had a string and then error message. C string. That good? It didn't save for some reason. All right. Good. That's very nice. Now, let's make these error messages. Let me just start the app first. I'll start the styling by styling the error messages because we have a component now for them. I'll make them, first of all, a little bit of a red colored so that they're errors. And maybe make them a little bit smaller. To do that, let's see my other items. We have these style variables I'm pushing. Now, this is my architecture for custom styled components currently, and it's not ideal. And I'll tell you why. I need to rework it completely, but I'm keeping it like this temporarily. Like many things, we will improve as time comes. Currently, a component is just a function. And then I push these style vars. IMGUI works a little bit like OpenGL in that it's like a state machine. We push style variables, then style colors, and we change colors and variables of some globals for button and frame or whatever. Render a button here with whatever. And then at the end, we pop. So these go back to default. And these operations are not ideal because they cost and they run on every frame, on every render, so they're hot, and that's not ideal. There are alternative methods to do this, but I'm keeping them architectured like this for now, for the sake of simplicity and because that's how I started. I need to rework it. Now, because I don't want to look up these variables, I'll just ask Wout. How can I use similar IMGUI functions to change text size and text color of IMGUI text? Because I want to see the specific variables that text uses. We have text colored. That's very good. And we have push and pop font. And font is what in this case? Let me see. I hate that. No. That's not the best way to do it. I also don't like that window font scale. No. Any other methods to change text size? There should be. We could do draw list. Why would the item spacing change font size? I think that's a hallucination. I don't want to load multiple fonts. What is IMGUI font? Set window font scale. No. I mean, I could, yeah, load different sizes. Okay. All right. So I need multiple font sizes. This changes my plans a bit because I didn't understand fonts like this when I was building the architecture. Actually, fonts are currently initiated in my app, I think. Let me open app CPP. Somewhere in it, I'm GUI maybe? Let's see. Font size base. There we go. But actually, where's font? Set fonts. Font regular. Wait, can't I change font size base? I should be, it's a style variable. But wait. And that is what I'm going to get style. Oh. Okay, so for smaller fonts, as far as I understand, if quality is right and it interprets the documentation or code base right, this is default without any fonts. And when I load the font here, I need to load more fonts, essentially, with different sizes, which is a bit annoying. I have to look up if that is a performant and right way to do it. So we'll ignore that for now. We'll just make it coward. Let's go to input error. And next time we could work on the font architecture specifically when we're prepared to do that. So I can do coward text. Was that right? Text coward. And it accepts IMVec4. Okay, I have a helper for that. Let me include helpers. And my helper is called hexcower, if I remember correctly. And let's just do red for now. Okay, it's not called hexcower. How is it called then? Let me look it up. It's hexcower, but I need the namespace here, and it needs alpha. So helpers, and alpha is a false. Okay. Let me collapse this. Okay, I like that. Let's run. It should be red text now. We will change it a bit though. I want some lighter red, but let's first test. Okay, yeah, this is too strong as a cover. I like the Apple Human Interface Guidelines red. Or no, I use material design covers, so let's see the cover system and pick some nice light red. By light I mean something or faded. Tomato colored, something like that. Yeah, something like this. E57 or something. Yeah. So I can just copy it right here. Let me run again. All right. Great. I like that. It's very nice and subtle. And readable, most importantly. Has good contrast and you can clearly see it's an error. Let me check how are we with time. Okay, we have a little bit of time. Let's see, can I style the inputs? Okay, I have my inputs like this. Let me check with Quad. What are the... color and style variables? I think I pushed colors, so colors I'm not interested in. They use frame rounding, frame padding, border size, thickness, whatever. So for now, I am pushing these for, let's say button, for example, like this. Frame padding, frame rounding. So per component, and I pop them. As I mentioned, that's bad in terms of performance. There's a better way to do it for a single component, and there's a better way to do it just globally. But I don't want to do it globally yet before I build the components and see what the situation is between them. So for now, let's try to keep them consistent, but not enforce that. And now do the same rounding for my input. Here's the input. And we need to pop. There we go. And we need to do the same for input multiline. Let me run the app. I'm missing pop style variable. Ah, okay. We can't do that. We return early. So this is a boolean. I'll call it input and we'll return it here. As I mentioned, this is only temporarily. You can see exactly why the problem is. It's very hot in terms of re-rendering, so we shouldn't do it like this. And let's do another boolean called input here for the single line, and we'll return it right here. Let's run again and test. Okay, we have rounding and padding, and I would like better padding on my fields, especially top and bottom. I mean, the buttons are fine like this, I think, but the fields... Actually, let's leave them like this for now. Now, the multi-line field currently has this vector right here, which I think is width and height. And I wanted to expand. Yeah. What is the default value of inv2? I don't want it to be fixed size. But I don't also know what size I want it to have. Ah, it's 0, 0 to size automatically. Great. So if we use that, it should be the same as the inputs. Let's check. Okay, that's great. So I want to ask about something else. My labels are currently on the right. How can I position them on the top? Because that's very interesting positioning. I don't have the app open, but it's very old school. So there's no option for that, essentially. Use whatever, some ID to hide the widget, and then place an Immediate GUI text above it. Okay, let's try that. Here we can do what? I think I need to do string cat, because here we're working with C strings, and I have to do this and label. That correct? What's that? C++ 11 does not allow conversion from string literal to character pointer. Can I do that? No. Whatever, it's just a warning. I can fix that later. So that should hide my label. Yeah, whatever. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Let's just build it right here. It would be safer. I'll say ID, and that will be this concatenation. can I do that? I can, I believe. Here I need the ID now. But as a C string. And the label I can use right here in IMGUI text. Let's just label. What's wrong here? Yeah. Format string. Okay, let's do it again. I've done C for quite a long time now. Okay. Good. So my multi-lines are as expected, it seems. And I need to do the same thing for single line. Which is right here. What's wrong? ID C string. Okay. All right. Well, spacings between components are not great, but I need some layout component that is more robust in general. So for now, I'm doing everything as a stack layout, just top to bottom, and later on we'll figure it out. For now, I am okay with that as it is. The only thing I would change is the padding a little bit. I would add more padding to the top and the bottom, and this is right here. Let's try 10 on the single line input first, and then we'll replicate the same size everywhere. And I think this will be sort of the last change we make for today at least. Let's do 12. I think I'll be satisfied with that. It just needs to be a little bit bigger so that it's more ergonomic, and yeah, I think I went a little bit overboard. So I'll lower it to 11 and do that. Of course, as I mentioned, this is a temporary styling solution, so we'll rework that entirely. Okay, I am happy with that. Very happy with that so far. Well, this is pretty good. I wasn't sure if we'll make it to do styling, but we did. Now, next time, the only thing I would change in terms of styling is to be able to have smaller fonts. And to do that, I need to first research if Cloud is hallucinating here, that I need to do separate font objects for each size. And just check out IMGUI and how to do that properly. And we'll add a couple of font sizes. If needed, I'll rework my font architecture just to be able to add different font sizes, because we won't do with one font size, that's for sure. And then we'll be able to use a smaller font size on my error messages, which is the last styling detail I want to change here. The other thing is probably I would not want the form to jump, but that will be solved when I do the form layouts and the other layouts and stuff. For now, I'm leaving it exactly as it is. And then we can move forwards to the other creation. We list all items currently, although basically, but we need to also be able to create user prompts. And I think, do we have another item to create? User prompts, test suits, and result runs are just run. So yeah, user prompts are the only form left right here. And I expect them to be a lot simpler. So next time we'll do fonts and probably do the user prompts form, if time allows. Thank you for tuning in. Let me check for comments one last time, if anyone asked anything. Apparently not. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow, the same time, and I'll continue working on this. It was a pleasure to chat.